Hello, everyone. Welcome tonight. Hello, Catalina. Hello, Kevin, Scott, Yuri, Tsai, Jens, Angie, Andrew, Cam, Kite, Claudia, Suzanne, and Greeno Bino. Good to see you all. And welcome for this evening. So tonight, Bhante will be talking about what will be guiding us in meditation for half an hour. And then he will be discussing the Four Noble Truths in pandemic times. So thank you for sharing the Dharma again with us, Bhante. And without further ado, we can start our meditation practice.
All right. So first off, get in a meditation posture. So if you're sitting on the floor, getting in a cross-legged position or a kneeling position. If you're sitting on a couch or a chair, well, I mean, that's not optimal, but you can do it. Or if sitting is not working for you these days, then you can stand. Standing is also perfectly fine. With any of these postures, make sure that your back is nice and straight, that your head is balanced evenly on top of the spine. So with the chin not tilted back, but the chin either parallel to the ground or tilted slightly forward. Shoulders swept back and allowed to relax down the back. The hands resting gently in your lap. And take a few long, slow, deep breaths. With each breath, letting the body and mind relax. So for the moment, there's nothing to do, nothing to think about, nothing to point the mind towards. So just enjoy these moments of peacefulness, these moments of calm. Nothing to worry about, nothing to plan, nothing to do except be present right here, right now. Feeling the blissful serenity of presence, the blissful serenity of non-distraction. So as each moment appears, we are present for it and we let it go. Another moment appears, we are present for it and we let it go. And recognizing the blissful, serene peacefulness that comes with knowing and letting go. Moment after moment, just knowing and letting go. And this is simultaneous. So knowing, letting go. Simultaneous, not separate. Whatever sensations come, whether it's visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, tactile. So whether it's eye, ear, nose, tongue, or body, just let the sensations come and let them go, aware as they arise and cease, without grasping or rejecting. Whatever thoughts and emotions arise, let them come and let them go, knowing as they arise and cease, without grasping or rejecting at any one. Not expecting any moment to be any particular way, not wanting it to be any particular way, just letting it be what it is. Appreciating the happiness of relinquishment, the happiness of contentment, the happiness of clarity. And into that blissful, alert serenity, gently introduce the wish for all beings to have this same serene bliss. Gently wishing, may everyone have the happiness of relinquishment. May everyone have the happiness of contentment. May everyone have the happiness of clarity. Whenever an impulse appears in the mind, an impulse towards any kind of activity, whether physical or mental, just let that impulse come and go without participating, without getting involved, without letting it push you one way or another. So keeping the mind steady, unmoving, thoroughly grounded in the happiness of letting go, the happiness of not taking up anything, the happiness of not being swept along. Appreciating the sublime joy of the awake mind that holds to nothing, that clings to nothing in the whole world, and nurturing the wish for all beings to experience this bliss, the bliss of non attachment. So that as we sit here silently, we are practicing not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all beings. Whatever appears, immediately let go of it without the slightest hesitation. Feeling the joy of renunciation, joy of relinquishment, the joy of non attachment, and wishing for all beings to have this same joy, the same happiness, the same serenity. So you can relax your posture and do a little bit of stretching or self-massaging if you need to. Take a moment just to rest in the peacefulness of the mind, appreciating the sense of peacefulness that comes after a period of meditation. Even the most distracted, scattered period of meditation, the mind is usually a little bit calmer afterwards, a little bit sharper. And just take a moment to appreciate this feeling of peaceful clarity.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Bhante, for guiding us in meditation. And hello to some new friends who connected in the meanwhile. Hello, Ridima. That's great from India. Good morning. And good to see you, Reed. Hello, Marielle. Yudia, Rupa. Hello to you as well. Matthew. Matthew is closer by here in New Jersey. Hi, Sally. And hi, James. Thanks for reminding us your real name. All right. So I'll pass it on to Bhante again so he can share some words of Dhamma tonight.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So first off, it's really lovely that you all are joining in. It's been really delightful to see so many people plugging in morning and evening, day after day after day. So I'm really delighted that you're still joining in, still benefiting from these programs that we're offering. And that actually reminds me of a really important thing, which is always to make the most of whatever situation we're in. So this period over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of tumultuous change, dramatic changes in lifestyle and how we're living our lives, dramatic changes in how we're thinking about the world, and how we're thinking about each other. And that can all be very unsettling and disturbing. But it can also be an opportunity for us to constantly look at our situation, to constantly look at our conditions and ask ourselves, how can I make the most of these conditions? How can I make the most of these conditions for the sake of developing my spiritual practice and for the sake of being of benefit to others? So, for example, here at the monastery, we had been talking for years about providing programs on YouTube, but with all the other programs we've had going on, it just never quite happened. So now we have this wonderful opportunity to open up a presence on YouTube, a way of offering and sharing the Dhamma through this particular platform. So it's making the most of a difficult situation. So suddenly we're not able to offer our in-person Dharma programs, our retreats and our meditation classes and the other programs that we normally have here. But what it does do is that it means we have the opportunity to cultivate friendships and spiritual partnerships and a sense of mutual support through online presence. So using the connectivity of this modern era as a way of cultivating our spiritual practice, as a way of forging connections with each other in this way. So, for example, our friend Ridhima, who we haven't seen in about a year now, uh, and she's joining in this evening, which is so wonderful. And so, welcome, Ridhima. I was really happy to hear that you're joining us this evening. So, even though she's on the other side of the world these days, she's still able to join in and be part of what we're doing. And the same with many of the people who participate. They may be too far away to come to the monastery physically, but that doesn't matter so much these days, because these days it's all online anyway. So whether you're next door or in India or Australia or Japan or wherever you happen to be, it doesn't matter, because we're all here together, supporting each other together. So that's something which is really important, is when we're faced with sudden, unexpected changes, instead of lamenting or moaning or falling into despair, instead always looking to see, how can I make the most of this opportunity? How can I use this as an opportunity to develop a wholesome mind? How can I use this as an opportunity to practice compassion? How can I use this as an opportunity to be of benefit to others? How can I turn this to the Dhamma? How can I turn this towards the Dhamma? How can I use this as a way of strengthening my practice? And strengthening one's practice doesn't just mean meditation, of course. It means the whole Noble Eightfold Path. And the foundation of the Noble Eightfold Path is an understanding of the Four Noble Truths. So the Four Noble Truths, it's one of those things which we talk about all the time in Buddhism. It's often considered to be the foundation stone of Buddhism, the cornerstone of the Buddha's teachings. And one of the downsides of that is, because we hear it all the time, that after a while it starts to become just meaningless buzzwords if we're not careful. It's like, oh, Four Noble Truths, here he goes again, same old stuff, suffering, origin, cessation, path. Yeah, we know, we've heard this a million times. And yeah, we have heard it a million times, but we clearly don't understand it yet. We've heard about the Noble Truths more times than we can count, perhaps, but clearly we don't quite get it. Because if we did, we would no longer experience dukkha. If we really understood the Four Noble Truths, then we would have no dukkha. If we really understood the Four Noble Truths, then we would be awakened by now. We would be beyond the touch of misery and confusion. We would no longer experience depression or torment of any sort. So clearly we don't quite understand the Four Noble Truths yet. This is quite visible in the cat. I can see the cat in front of me, who is overcome by dukkha about 50% of the time. The other 50%, his dukkha is merely mild. But about half the time, he's just overwhelmed with this powerful sense of discontent, this powerful dissatisfaction. And of course, he tries to alleviate his discontent by seeking things, trying to find something entertaining to do or something pleasant to eat. Or he just endlessly harasses our poor resident May. And so far, his strategies have been completely unsuccessful. So May has been thoroughly harassed, and yet the cat is still filled with discontent. So clearly that's not working very well. At this point, he's roamed through every corner of the monastery, and he's still experiencing discontent. So clearly that's not working terribly well either. He eats until he pukes, literally. And yet somehow he still experiences discontent. So the food thing's not quite working either. So it's actually really lovely having animals around, because they remind us of ourselves. Because we do all of those things. We eat too much, thinking it will make us happy, and then it doesn't. Or we eat junk food, thinking it will make us happy, and it doesn't. We seek out adventure, thinking it will make us happy, and it doesn't. We harass May, thinking it will make us happy, and it doesn't. And this is because we don't understand the Four Noble Truths. Even if we've been Buddhists for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or a whole lifetime or countless lifetimes, we still don't get it. We still do not understand the Four Noble Truths, which is why we keep acting like the cat. It's why we keep trying to find happiness in things which cannot provide it. It's why we keep overlooking the actual cause of our discontent. It's why we keep trying to grab onto things which cannot satisfy us. So the Four Noble Truths are not something to be neglected. They're something to continuously return to. There's something to continuously examine. And there's something to continuously look for in our own experience. So this is really important. The Four Noble Truths are not just some doctrinal concept that you read about in a book. They're a framework for investigation, like everything else the Buddha taught. It's meant to be lived. It's meant to be felt. It's meant to be experienced. It's meant to be seen in each moment. So the Four Noble Truths are not just a bunch of ideas. The Four Noble Truths are a guideline for investigation. So in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which is traditionally said to be the first formal discourse that the Buddha gave, in actuality, that's not exactly true. So the Buddha's very first teaching was, it was, depending on how far back you want to go, there was all the devas that gathered around him when he attained awakening. So you might say that was his first teaching, was his presentation to the devas who were at the site of awakening. But the first recorded teaching that we have is actually when the Buddha met another spiritual practitioner on the road. And the Buddha delivered a statement to that spiritual practitioner. So that spiritual practitioner saw the Buddha, recognized that the Buddha was very bright and shiny and looked very happy and peaceful. And so this other practitioner, he said to the Buddha, "Oh, your face is so shiny and you look so peaceful. You must have received some really good Dharma teachings. You must be practicing a really good system. Who taught you your practices? Who taught you the system that you're using?" And the Buddha replied, "No one taught me, for I am the only one who has clearly seen the truth." And he goes talking about how he's this amazing enlightened being. And the spiritual practitioner is like, whatever, and walks away. So that was actually the Buddha's very first teaching, and it didn't go terribly well. So then when he went to his 5 former companions, so these were 5 spiritual practitioners who the Buddha had been practicing with prior to going off on his own. So when he went to them, initially he taught them a series of progressive teachings, a series of small, ordinary, everyday teachings, which helped to prepare them for the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, for the discourse on the setting in motion of the wheel of Dhamma. So while we say it's the first teaching the Buddha gave, that's not exactly accurate. At best, it's number 3, possibly number 4. Nonetheless, it was very early on. And what distinguished the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta is that it was built around analyzing the Four Noble Truths. So a substantial portion of that sutta is the Buddha talking about the Four Noble Truths and how to, what our duty is towards them, what the task is. So the first one, dukkha, he says, dukkha is to be fully understood. Parinyeya, it's to be fully known. So this is our duty. Our duty is to not turn away from dukkha, but to know it fully and clearly, to know it as it is. So in each moment, looking, where is the dukkha? What does it feel like? What's the experience of it? And the second one, samudaya, which means arising, the arising of dukkha. Well, the arising of dukkha is caused by craving, it's caused by desire, it's caused by attachment, it's caused by aversion. So it's recognizing that underlying cause for the arising of dukkha, recognizing that underlying craving and aversion, and abandoning it. So that's the duty for the second noble truth, is to abandon that which causes dukkha to arise. So to abandon underlying craving and attachment. So we recognize the dukkha and we abandon its cause, which is desire, attachment, and aversion. And then there's the third noble truth, which is cessation, the cessation of dukkha. So that's something which is to be realized. It's to be recognized. So when we let go of our desire and attachment and aversion, and our dukkha diminishes, then we should recognize that our dukkha has diminished. This is a very important step in this process that we often skip past, that we often forget about. So every moment that we successfully let go of a little bit of our dukkha, we should recognize that. We should recognize that we have, in fact, successfully let go of a bit of our dukkha. Because that builds up our confidence that we are capable of transcending dukkha. It builds up our confidence that we're not trapped in dukkha. It builds up our awareness that we have the ability to cultivate a blissful, serene mind through this process of knowing dukkha fully, recognizing what's making it arise, and abandoning that cause, letting go of that cause. And the fourth noble truth is the path, which is the Noble Eightfold Path, and that's to be practiced. It's to be developed. It's to be cultivated. It's to be brought into being moment after moment. So that's the task of following the Noble Eightfold Path. But this is not a talk about the Noble Eightfold Path, so I'm not going to go into detail on that. I go into detail about it often enough at other times. But rather emphasizing the task or the duty in relation to the first three truths. So dukkha is to be fully known. The cause for its arising is to be abandoned. The cessation of dukkha is to be realized. So this is actually what we were doing in the meditation practice in a very direct, very subtle way. So in each moment, we know whatever is arising, and we immediately let go of it. Because as I was saying this morning in the Kachanagota Sutta, what's arising is just dukkha. So whatever arises in the mind, whatever solid object arises that we latch onto, that we attach to, that's just dukkha. And when we let go of it and allow it to fade away, then that's the cessation of dukkha. It's only dukkha that arises and only dukkha that ceases. So whenever we latch on to the perception of a sensation or a thought as being persistent, as being real, then we're latching on to dukkha. So know that dukkha. Know it for what it is. Oh, this is dukkha. Recognize the underlying attachment. Recognize that attachment to a particular experience of body and mind. Recognize that attachment to a particular perception. Recognize that attachment to a particular thought or emotion. And recognize that that attachment is causing the dukkha. And allow it to cease. Allow that perception to cease. Allow that thought to cease. Allow that sensation to end. Allow that emotion to fade away. Allow it to happen. You don't need to force it to go away. Just stop holding on to it. And notice that the moment we stop holding on, our dukkha evaporates. So it's only dukkha that arises and only dukkha that ceases. That's it. So I'm supposed to connect this to the present situation. So the pandemic era, I think that's the title of this talk, The Four Noble Truths in the Pandemic Era. So what's going on these days? Well, a lot of things that we don't like, people getting sick, people dying, economic collapse, except in China. China's apparently doing fine with the economy. It's just everybody else that's having a hard time. Economic collapse in most countries. Many of our friends are sick. So I personally know several people who are sick, either confirmed coronavirus or suspected coronavirus. In some countries, it's incredibly bad. So in Italy, the situation is nightmarish. It's really horrific. New York City is almost as bad and rapidly getting worse. And so what's happening in our mind, moment by moment? So in our mind, we see the arising of unpleasant thoughts, unpleasant emotions, unpleasant sensations. Well, know it. Don't turn away from it. Don't try to pretend it isn't happening. Don't ignore it, but know it fully. This is what it feels like. This is dukkha, right here, right now. This is the feeling of dukkha. This is what it's like. Know it fully. Don't suppress it. Don't pretend everything's fine, because it's not fine. And if we pretend it's fine, then we're just cultivating delusion. So the first noble truth is being willing to admit everything is not okay. Everything is not fine. And that's okay, as long as we know it. So being willing to admit to ourselves, yeah, this is a huge disaster. It's a big problem. Lots of people are being very badly affected by this. I am not doing terribly well. We can admit that to ourselves. We can admit to ourselves, I'm having a hard time. It's okay to admit that to yourself. That's the beginning of wisdom. That's the beginning of happiness. The beginning of wisdom is acknowledging that you're confused. The beginning of happiness is acknowledging that you're miserable. So if you're having a hard time, be honest with yourself that you're having a hard time. If you're experiencing distress and confusion, be honest with yourself that you're experiencing distress and confusion. If you're experiencing anger and disappointment, well, be honest with yourself that that's what you're experiencing. This is just the way it is right now. Pretending it's otherwise doesn't help us at all. So first we have to acknowledge what's going on inside our own hearts, inside our own minds. What is our dukkha? What does it feel like? What's the experience? And then look a little bit deeper and see, well, what's causing it to appear? What's causing it to arise? Why am I experiencing dukkha? What is the underlying desire, attachment, or aversion that is causing this dukkha? What is it? Is it because we want to go out for dinner, but we can't because all the restaurants are closed? Is it because we want to go to the monastery, but we can't? Is it because we want our friends and family to be healthy, but some of them are sick? Possibly critically ill, possibly dying? Is it because we were attached to the lifestyle that we had just 3 weeks ago? In some places in the world, it's been a bit longer, but just a few weeks ago. Are we attached to the lifestyle that we had a few weeks ago? So are we experiencing grieving, a sense of loss? because we were attached to a lifestyle that we can't currently live? Are we experiencing aversion? Aversion to the sudden clampdown of rules and restrictions that we didn't have just a few weeks ago? Aversion to the shortage of toilet paper on the store shelves? Uh, Aversion to other people who aren't following the social distancing guidelines? Aversion to government officials who aren't handling things as well as we want them to? Uh, well, whatever it is, whatever shade of desire, attachment, or aversion we're experiencing, recognize that that's just making our dukkha worse. It's not helping one bit. Doesn't contribute to happiness. Fueling that negativity in the mind, fueling that attachment in the mind, fueling that nostalgia, that craving, that irritation, that resentment, that doesn't make us happy. It just makes us more and more unhappy. So let's drop it. Let's let go of it. Let's allow the mind to return to that spacious, serene peacefulness that we know is possible. Because every once in a while the clouds part and we touch it. During our meditation practice in particular, every once in a while there's a little window of peace, a little window of joy. And we're like, oh, that's nice. Didn't know that was possible. And then we start stirring up the clouds again. And things get messy again. And we're right back in our old dukkha fest. But remember that for a few moments, there was a feeling of peace. For a few moments, there was a feeling of joy. So we know we can do it. We know it's possible. So this is why it's so important to realize the moments of cessation, to consciously bring attention to those moments when our dukkha diminishes or disappears, even if just for a fraction of a second. It's so easy to skip those moments. It's so easy to forget about them and overlook them. Which means we have to make a conscious effort to see them when they happen, to feel them when they happen, to pay attention to them, to remember them. It's like, oh, this is what it feels like to be peaceful. How lovely. This is what it feels like to be awake. How lovely. This is what it feels like to be happy. Wasn't that an interesting feeling? Remember, remind ourselves. And remind ourselves of what we're doing that allows us to have those little windows of peace and joy. So it's not endlessly refreshing worldometer, watching the number of global cases gradually increase. That's not going to help us very much. Probably. That can be a compassion practice, but for most people, it's more of a despair practice. Believe it or not, despair is not a wholesome mind state. It's not actually something the Buddha encouraged us to develop. It's probably not scrolling through your Facebook wall to find more depressing or infuriating reports about government incompetence. That's also probably not going to help alleviate your dukkha. It's a great way to stay awake at night, but it's not a particularly good way to cultivate happiness and serenity. But at the same time, we also can't pretend that nothing's wrong in the world, because clearly something is wrong. Clearly something is disastrously wrong. And clearly a lot of people are suffering. So we can also take the step of wishing for all those who suffer to be free of suffering. Wishing for all those who are sad to be free of sadness. Wishing for all those who are sick to be free of sickness. Wishing for all those who are angry to be free of anger. Wishing for all those who are confused to be free of confusion. And that includes ourselves, as well as everybody else. We're all in the same boat, the same sinking boat in the middle of the ocean of sorrow. We're all in the same boat. So we can extend our compassionate wish for all those who are affected, which is all of us. There's not one person who's not affected by this. And there's not one person who doesn't wish to be happy, whether they realize it or not. So we wish for all of them to be happy. We wish for all to be free of affliction. And we start with this one, this mind right here, the mind that we have the most direct awareness of, the most direct access to. And we start by cultivating this experience of the Four Noble Truths, this examination of the Four Noble Truths, this living of the Four Noble Truths, and noticing how much better that makes things within this mind. And noticing how that gives us the strength of mind to be of benefit to others, the strength of mind to be a refuge of peace and joy for others. And then knowing that our practice is making us more of a refuge for others, can help encourage us to be even more committed and diligent in our own practice. So I think I've been speaking for long enough at this point. So I'd like to open up for questions. As usual, if you have any questions, you can type them into the live chat, and we'll go through them in the order that they appear, and I'll answer as best I can.
Thank you so much, Bhante, for sharing Dhamma. And hello, Bobby and Victor. Good to see you online. Sadhu. And Gautam as well. Bina and Gautam are watching together. Great to see you online. And hello to Melinda as well. It's awesome. All right. So Sally had a question about the meditation. So in the release the thoughts that you mentioned during the meditation versus trace back origin of the thoughts, 2 days ago, Bhante gave an example of grandma's garden. What's the different conditions that we apply the different method?
It depends on how deeply caught you are by the thought habits and the thought patterns. So when the mind is already fairly well trained, then you can just immediately drop whatever appears. Actually, you can practice doing that anyway. And sometimes it will work and sometimes it won't. But either way, it will start to build up that ability to let go of whatever thought appears the moment it appears. But when you notice that you're getting caught in long chains of useless thinking, then that's when it's often useful to start examining more closely. What is sparking all of this? How do I get lost in these long chains of mental proliferation, these spreading infections in the mind? How does that get out of control? So in that case, it can be very helpful to look back and notice how it's sparked by something. Again, usually a sensation of some sort. Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or thought. Something appears. And rather than let it go immediately, instead we start building a story around it. And in a very short period of time, that story spreads like an infection. It spreads through the whole mind, dominates the whole mind, usually in a matter of a few seconds or even a few fractions of a second. So this can happen extremely quickly. So if you're able to drop thoughts the moment they appear, then just do that. That's good enough. But if you notice that you tend to get caught in proliferation, you tend to get caught in that rapidly spreading infection of thoughts overwhelming the mind, then tracing things back, tracing the process back to its source can be a helpful way of keeping us from getting so caught up next time. Okay.
Thank you so much, Bhante. And Junie has a question on, a remark. Some of us get it all too well. I think she's referring to the Four Noble Truths. but as a female, have not had any monastery in which to find refuge. It is not as easy for women as it is for men to find an adequate place to live and practice Dhamma. But Bobby commented after her journey, why not empty cloud? And for those of you who don't know, Empty Cloud Monastery is where we currently are at. Disclaimer.
Comes with cats.
Yeah, comes with cute cats. Cute, grumpy cats. Also nicknamed by Reed a Jan Cone face. So sometimes a Jan Cone face is just a Jan without the cone. So, Bhante, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, so I mean, you're correct that there's a lot fewer opportunities for females, and that's quite sad. To be perfectly honest, it's really not the way things should be, and I don't believe it's what the Buddha had in mind. But it is the condition that we're faced with these days. So there are a few options, and if you send an email, then I can give you a list of options, which you can go and explore once the pandemic starts letting up. So you are, of course, welcome to come and practice here with us if you want to. There's also a number of other places which you might want to explore and see if they're to your benefit.
Thank you, Bhante. I will just add to that actually in California, there are quite a few Bhikkhuni monasteries. So there are, in fact, 4 places, 4 monasteries where one can practice in the Theravada tradition, which is actually quite great. They're all in the San Francisco Bay Area or around those. Actually, one is in Sacramento, close to Sacramento. So as Bhante said, if you send us an email, we can send you a link. And in the Mahayana tradition, on the other hand, there is no problem at all. As a matter of fact, actually, there are more female monastics than there are male monastics in Taiwan anyway. So yes, there's plenty of opportunities to practice Dharma. So don't.
Yeah, so I had the interesting experience. Last time I was in Taiwan, I was contacting a bunch of monasteries and asking if I could come visit. And most of the places I contacted to were like, sorry, no men allowed. Because most of the monasteries there are only for women. Most of the monasteries are run by female monastics and only accept female monastics as guests. So yes, there are places in the Buddhist world where you'll find you have plenty of options. And as Ayasoma mentioned, in North America, there's a few which are worth checking out. So send us an email. We'll help you out.
Yeah, and actually we're launching a map this week, the next couple of days, made by Michael. I don't know if he's actually online now, but a big shout out to Mike, who has put the monastery map together. So you can actually have a bit of an overview of monastics in North America. All right. And Reed says, I think not too many people would have trouble seeing dukkha in the pandemic, in empty toilet paper shelves and so on. But what about seeing it in the pleasant stuff as well? Do you have advice on recognizing it in those other things that aren't so immediately unsatisfying? I think failing to recognize that is what keeps many of us, or at least me, frequently taking refuge in sensuality instead of our practice. So it seems like a weak point I need to shore up.
Yeah, so the Buddha said that we need to be aware of gratification, disadvantage, and escape in regard to sensory experiences. So it sounds like you're pretty good at the gratification part. But you also need to pay attention to the disadvantages, to the drawbacks. So the drawbacks of sensory experiences is that they are impermanent, they are unsatisfying, and they are impersonal. So yeah, there is gratification to be found in things. So a week or two ago, someone donated pizza to the monastery, which was much appreciated. but it was temporary. It only lasted for a few minutes and then it was gone. It was impermanent. It was temporary. And it was unsatisfying. And it was nice, of course. It was nice. But it was not 100% totally amazingly satisfying. It was pretty good, but it wasn't 100% amazing. It wasn't 100% satisfying because that's the nature of all things. All things are less than satisfying. And ultimately, what was being experienced was still within the realm of samsara. You get what you want one day, and then you don't get what you want the next day. You get something you like one day and something you dislike the next day. This is just the way things are. And then while we're experiencing something pleasant, we're also ruining our enjoyment of that pleasantness because we're wrapped up in attachment and obsession, which generates agitation in the mind. So actually, I noticed this, like when the pizza arrived, I started to get agitated. Agitation started coming up of like, oh yes, there's pizza. This is going to be great. And I'm like, oh, why are they taking so long to set up? What's this delay? We should be eating the pizza already. Why are we waiting? And then we actually get our pizza and then start eating. And it's like, oh, but this isn't going to last very long. And then it's over. And it's like, oh, it's over. So actually, that mind of desire and attachment that tends to run through pleasant experiences ruins our enjoyment of it, greatly reduces and diminishes the pleasantness of the whole experience. So that's another aspect of recognizing disadvantage, recognizing drawback, is seeing how even in the midst of pleasant experiences, our own desire and attachment for those pleasant experiences reduces the pleasantness, makes it less enjoyable. So these are some of the ways of contemplating drawback, contemplating disadvantage. Okay.
Thank you very much, Bhante. And Marielle has a comment saying that maybe the indigenous tribes that have no contact with the rest of the world are not that affected by this global crisis, ... yet. I think it was referred to your list of people.
Yeah, yet is the key word here.
Yeah, hopefully they still won't be affected. And Suzanne says, probably the greatest gift you have given me is the knowledge that peace is always available.
Oh, that's very sweet.
The situation is wearing on us now that the novelty has worn off. No pun intended. But I realized yesterday I had to take despair off the table. It is a kind of spiritual challenge.
Yeah. And it can be really difficult because it's really easy to fall into despair at these times, but despair doesn't help us at all. It doesn't do us one bit of good. So it's recognizing that it's not obligatory and it's not helpful. So you add that together, and the wise choice is to start to get a handle on it. Work on letting go of the despair and cultivating a sense of contentment. If you can be content with whatever's going on right now, then you'll always be happy. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante. And Yuri is complaining that there is no dog. We might have the chickens though in a few days.
We could try. We could try a chicken cameo. That would be a little more complicated.
And Melvin asks, does the noble in Four Noble Truths refer to the nobility of the statements, the nobility of those who should hear them, or the nobility of those who understand them?
So, my understanding traditionally is that the truths are called noble because a deep understanding of them leads to full enlightenment, leads to one becoming an Arya, which is a noble one. So they're called the Arya Satya, so the noble truths, because a deep realization of them makes a person noble. which, again, in the context of the Pali Suttas, that means awakened. It means enlightened. It means someone who's attained some stage of awakening. I've heard a number of other explanations of this term Arya Satya, noble truth, but that's the one which makes the most sense to me. So that's the one that we'll go with for now.
Thank you. And Juni is thanking for the message before. She's also adding she's not, I'll paraphrase, that she's not particularly interested in the Mahayana and in California.
Okay, well, that does limit your options a little bit, but still, send us an email.
Yes. And Melinda says, when the time is right, I would like to become a nun. Aww.
I hope you get your wish, Melinda.
Yeah. Hopefully, you mean a Buddhist monastic, not a Catholic nun. Although Catholic nun is cool, is okay too. Anyway, we look forward to you joining the club. And Kevin says, friends, please consider practicing dana to support the monastery. Sister Soma will provide details. Okay. You can go to buddhistinsights.com/ excuse me, donate.
So /donate, not /sneeze, excuse me, donate. So we're clear on that.
So that would be a kind of cute slash. Thank you for being our reminder of practicing wholesome qualities of mind, Kevin. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And Rupa also has other suggestions for Bhikkhuni monasteries. Thank you for mentioning it. So she says, I'm aware of North Carolina, Yasudhamma, and South Carolina also for the Theravada tradition. And actually, since we're talking about North Carolina, in North Carolina, there's also my lovely preceptor, the incredible Venerable Panyavati. So Heartwood Refuge is her monastery, and she's really awesome.
Yeah, she usually has a few female monastics in training there. So that's another place to look into. There's also Aya Sudarshana's place in Florida. There's a handful of places in Australia. There's a couple places in Thailand. Send us an email. There's more places than you might think these days.
All right, thanks. And Ridima says, I love the pizza example and the conversation about us humans being similar to animals, cats. Yes, that's why we call him a John Stan, because he always teaches us a lot of lessons about ourselves. And Sally says, thanks, Bhante. When I fall into patterns, the intention to trace back the thoughts is I want to get rid of the bad habitual thoughts. Then I fall into more proliferation and even aversion because I can't change the patterns and it will happen again. Maybe I should change the intention when tracing back, how to investigate but not fall into proliferation.
So investigate purely with the intention to know, to understand, not with the intention to get rid of. So just investigate, just wanting to know. Just wanting to understand this mind, just wanting to understand dukkha. And as your understanding grows, then you'll find that the dukkha diminishes. Also, the most direct way, once again, is just to immediately stop. The moment you catch yourself in any kind of useless thinking, immediately stop. So it's this unrelenting attitude of just immediately stop. So if thoughts just randomly appear on their own, that's not a problem. But if we participate at all, then we feed our dukkha. So that's what to watch out for. And the moment you catch yourself engaging in any kind of intentional mental activity, especially if it's not wholesome, immediately stop. Without judgment, without self-blame, without criticism, just instantly stop. If you practice in this way, then you'll get control of your mind in a relatively short period of time.
Great. And then there are several messages that are very happy and grateful of your talk. And Yuri says, I can bring Bhikkhu Yoshi. He's kind, quiet, and peaceful.
Okay.
Who's that?
I
Very
don't know.
curious. And Yuri also says, the word none chases me away. Me too. In fact, that's why at Empty Cloud we use monk as a gender neutral term for Buddhist monastics. But there are other monastics that prefer none. So it's always a matter of preference. And the path is always easy for those who have no preference.
Yeah, and I would encourage you not to get distracted by the words. So what we mean is just a female monastic. So whether you call it monk or nun, whether you call it bhikkhuni, bhikshuni, it doesn't really matter. Of course, there's good reasons to use certain words and not use other words. In fact, Ayasoma can go on at length about why we should not use the word nun, as she has done on countless occasions, and hopefully she'll do it on camera soon, so that the whole world can understand her viewpoints on why we should not use the word nun in Buddhism. But setting that aside for now, the important thing is asking yourself, is there value in being a female monastic? That's the only important question. And the answer is yes, of course. So just because some people use the word nun should not turn you away from the opportunity for wholesomeness that lies within this path. Okay.
All right. And well, Junie mentioned a few places that she's been. Once again, please send us an email so we can have that conversation in person. I think it's better. And Jens mentions, I see the truths as being noble as they are also true. They are true everywhere for everyone, true, truly timeless. People seem to, Yudi and Marielle anyway, are also interested in the nun talk. Yeah.
Ask it in the Q&A next time Ayasoma is giving the talk.
A little trick. And Sally says, thanks, Bhante. That's really helpful. Seeing and knowing arises the wisdom. All right. And I think that's all that I see in terms of questions tonight. Thank you so much for the beautiful talk, Bhante. It was very inspiring. And from the comments, I see that everybody feels in the same way. So sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And thank you so much for joining us once again. It's so great. Oh, hello, Trisha. She came to say thank you now. So she was there all along. I love it. There's always like last comments. So Cam actually has, whenever I say bye, then it's like, fake news. So Cam asks, Bhante, in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Buddha talked about the Four Noble Truths, but he also taught the Noble Eightfold Path. So it's two teachings in the first teaching?
So he listed the 8 aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path, but he didn't go into any detail about them. Whereas he did go into detail about the Four Noble Truths in a couple different ways. So while he did briefly list the Noble Eightfold Path, that's not the central message of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. The central message of that sutta is the Four Noble Truths, which he analyzes in 2 different ways.
Right. Ooh, Sally says, today I had the experience understanding that consciousness is not mine. Yes, sadhu, thank you all.
Great.
That's
great,
awesome.
Wonderful.
Great,
well
great.
Done.
Oh, and Suzanne is saying, may everyone be happy, healthy, and safe. Love to you all.
All right.
We all share that wish.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much once again for joining us. And we'll see you tomorrow morning. So instead of tuning in on CNN, you can tune in on BNN, our Buddhist. I don't have you say that
News network.
news network. Kyle nicknamed us BNN this morning. All right. See you tomorrow at 8 a.m. and tomorrow evening at 7:30 p.m. And this weekend we'll also have a weekend retreat. So we'll be the usual times of 8 a.m. and 7:30 p.m., but also an extra talk at 1:30 p.m. So in the middle of the day. All right. May everyone be free from suffering, as Sally says. Yes, sadhu. And have a great